And here to help provide more insight on the auto industry is Karl Brauer. He's an executive analyst at iSeeCars.com. Karl, thanks so much for coming on with us.
Great being on with you, Karina.
So this auto show is a big deal. What major EV innovations or new models are being unveiled at the LA Auto Show this year?
Yeah, I think it was interesting to watch the Koreans seem to take the most advantage of this show in terms of how much product activity, and probably their biggest news was the new Ioniq 9 from Hyundai, which is their first three-row family-oriented electric vehicle. And it's basically sitting on the same platform as the existing Kia that's also similar to the EV9 from Kia, but the Ioniq 9 will be Hyundai's version, and it's going to have over 300 miles of range, and it'll also have the new North American charging standard that started with Tesla, but is being rolled out to all the other brands now to let them access the supercharger network.
And Karl, what sort of trends are emerging in the design and functionality of EVs showcased at the event, and the size of these vehicles as well?
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely seeing some common themes of larger battery packs, further range, faster charging, and bigger display screens inside. That seems to be kind of a common theme for any of the cars that were remade for the show. Some of them all new, some of them mid-cycle refreshes, but those are what you're commonly seeing.
How quickly is the technology progressing, would you say?
You know, it keeps getting better, but I feel like, you know, we kind of seem to hit a wall of around 300 miles of range, give or take, depending on the model. I mean, you've got some really crazy vehicles like the Lucids that'll go over 400 miles, but those are very pricey. As far as mainstream models, we seem to be kind of, you know, 250 to 300 miles, give or take, is the range we're at. And sort of like your report was talking about, that seems okay, but if you're out there using the infrastructure, even in Southern California, I've had to wrestle with it. It can still be a challenge to keep the car charged up.
Yeah, and what sort of incentives or programs are automakers promoting to help attract environmentally conscious drivers, particularly at a time when President-elect Trump says he might reverse some of those EV incentives that have been handed out?
Yeah, we still have the $7,500 federal tax credit for all the electric vehicles, although they do have to have a certain amount of domestic origins on where they're built and where the components come from to qualify. And then we have increasingly aggressive lease rates going on. And I'm definitely seeing the automakers try to lower those monthly lease payments to get more and more people into these vehicles, because they are starting to stack up at dealerships.
How do you think the demographic of EV buyers has evolved in recent years? Are you seeing more people that are interested in environmentally friendly cars?
You know, I think there's a lot of people who are interested, but I feel like it's hard to break out of the kind of homeowner, relatively affluent, multi-car family. Those people can use an EV because they can get their home charging, and they have an alternative gas vehicle if they really need to go far and not worry about charging. But we need to get past that. We need to break through to the mainstream consumer, the single person who only can have one vehicle and maybe lives in a multi-unit housing thing like an apartment or condo. And I think it's much tougher to get them on board.
And what role do you think California's environmental policy play in influencing the auto industry's push towards sustainable vehicles?
Well, of course, California's got the biggest car market, and they do have the California Air Resources Board, or CARB as it's known, who are instituting their own standards, and then other states often join in, up to 17 other states. So they definitely influence national policy. It will be interesting to see if the Trump administration tries to change that, because there's a lot of people who suggest that's not really a state policy. It should be federal policy only.
And what other trends did you see or follow at this year's LA show?
Well, you know, they're still doing a lot of great internal combustion vehicles too. I think the most important vehicle shown here was the Volkswagen Tiguan, all new. This is a mainstream vehicle. It's the best-selling vehicle for Volkswagen, and it's not a hybrid or electric. It's just a really well-executed compact SUV. That's a popular segment here. And it really has an incredibly good interior with these giant screens, either 12.9 inches or 15-inch central touch screens, some great ambient lighting. So I think that was probably the most important car in terms of actually being a mainstream high-volume vehicle.
What are some of the biggest challenges that stand in the road to EV cars becoming more attractive to people interested in buying them?
You know, price is always the biggest single factor that a consumer uses to decide what they're going to buy, especially mainstream consumers. And EVs still cost more upfront, and they tend to lose their value quicker while you own them. And they also tend to be driven less. So when you think about paying more upfront driving it less during any given year and then having to sell it for a much lower rate than the equivalent gasoline car, that puts a real damper on a lot of mainstream consumers' interest to buy one.